In this session, we are going to learn what is IaaS and PaaS, which stands for Infrastructure as a Service, and the second one stands for Platform as a Service. So our requirement is we need to have the Postgre deployed on a machine in the cloud, and there is a decision making which has to happen, and mostly there is a lot of discussion which happens whether you wanted to install the Postgre on a virtual machine in a cloud, or you wanted to have a pre-installed managed instance of PostgreSQL. So there are two terms which are very oftenly used. One is IaaS, which is known as the virtual machine deployed in the cloud, and the other word which comes is PaaS. There is a spell mistake over here, which is PaaS. It should be platform as a service. So it is simply like if you wanted to have the full control over a machine and you wanted to deploy Postgre on top of that in the cloud, maybe in AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud. You need to have the virtual machine spin up in any of these preferred cloud or any other service provider which you have. The other way is you can choose with the pre-installed managed instance of Postgre in any of these three major cloud service provider. So that's the basic difference between the infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. So basically, a virtual machine which is there in the cloud is called as IaaS. And if there is a pre-installed instance of Postgre in cloud and you do not have access to the operating system, it is termed as the PaaS, platform as a service. So what is the decision making factor, like what shall I choose? So it depends upon how much control do you want over the machine. If I wanted to have the full control in terms of the Postgre instance which I wanted to install, let's say I wanted to install a Postgre which is quite legacy that's quite old, let's say 9.5 or 9.6, just because of my application dependency and something like that. This is just an assumption. And most of your Postgre managed instance, which is available in either of these three service providers, cloud service providers, they may not have the oldest version. And if somehow you have those binaries you wanted to get installed on a virtual machine, you have to select a virtual machine in any of these cloud, and there you can go with that. So when you choose between infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, you need to have some decision making, like how do you want to manage the database? How do you want to apply the patches? How do you want to manage the backups? And how do you want the operation related what do you say, the operational things of Postgre managed? Right, so you need to consider all of these. If you are running your Postgre on a virtual machine in the cloud, and then you have to take care of everything, starting from the deployment. Then you have to manage the high availability, you have to manage the disaster recovery, you have to manage the monitoring, you have to manage the backups, you have to manage the replication if it is there. So it is, everything is customer managed. But when it is about a platform as a service, in that case there are a lot of overheads which you, or there are a lot of work which wherein an administrator work. Those are already taken away from the administrator, and they are already automated in cloud. So there is an easy manageability when you work in a managed instance, be it any of these three: Azure, AWS, or Google Cloud services. So we will see some of the attributes. So availability SLA. If let's say my virtual machine or infrastructure as a service, it is in the AWS cloud, then the SLA depends upon the virtual machine which you have selected. If I talk about Postgre as a managed instance or as platform as a service, in that case, it will depend upon the managed instance SLA. What about the operating system and PostgreSQL patching? If you are running it on a virtual machine as infrastructure as service, then it is your responsibility. It's customer managed and you have to manage everything. If it is with platform as a service, then it is optional and you can manage it in the managed window. But most of these things are automated by the cloud. High availability, you have to architect how you wanted to maintain the high availability of Postgre when you install Postgre in a virtual machine in cloud. And when you go with the managed instance, it is available built in. So you just have to find out what kind of high availability which is available in the particular cloud you wanted to go with. Hybrid scenario, if you wanted to have the what do you say, the multiple instances of the Postgre, say for example, for high availability, you can have you have to manage it yourself. But there are some in case of the cloud, it is termed as the read replica, and there is a consistent replication happening between the primary and the read replica, so they are in continuous replication with each other. So that's easily managed. But when you have to do it yourself, you have to manage all the challenges. The backup and restore, which is one of the most critical part in Postgre. If it is on a virtual machine, you have to manage everything yourself, whether you wanted to do either of the three, the way like you wanted to use the PG dump all, or you wanted to have using the PG based backup, or you wanted to use some third party tool to manage the backup and recovery, you have to do it yourself. But when you go with the platform as a service, so everything is automated, the point in time recovery, the backups, and everything is managed by the cloud service provider. Then the important part is about the monitoring of the database. So if you are doing it yourself, then you have to make sure what individual components you wanted to monitor. But when you are in managed instance, everything is pre-managed, and you just have to trigger what alerts you wanted to see. Let's say for the storage, for the CPU, for the memory, for the maximum number of sessions, about some performance threshold. So everything you can set in the managed instance. Threat protection, in case of a virtual machine, you have to manage it yourself, not at the cloud service provider, but something where you wanted to protect the data internally. But when you talk about the Postgre as a managed instance or platform as a service, so you have a lot of things which are available that you can enable. Disaster recovery, in case of managed instance, it is, we call it as read replica, and in case of virtual machine, you have to manage it yourself. With infrastructure as a service, what do we get? It is, if you are trying to do, if you have the shortage of the manpower or the skilled worker, and you do not have any dependency on the operating system, then probably managed instance is one of the good thing to go with. But if you have some dependency, and those dependency cannot be ruled out with the managed instance, then you have to go with the infrastructure as a service. So full control, you can have it over the virtual machine, but not over the managed instance. With platform as a service, what do we get? So you are not supposed to bother about the underlying infrastructure, the operating system, the hardware, and the internal software. Everything will be taken care by the cloud service provider. But other than that, let's say the managing of the high availability of the databases, the read replicas, encryption, those things will be taken care by the cloud service provider. So everything has its own pros and cons. So it depends upon what kind of scenario you have. And if you wanted more flexibility, you have to go with infrastructure as a service. If you are fine with the less what do you say, less flexibility, and you wanted to give away all the management part to the cloud service provider, you can go with the managed instance. So it depends upon what you are looking for. So it's all about the virtual machine and the managed instance. So sometimes there is some kind of confusion, like what is this IaaS or PaaS? So it's very simple. If it is a virtual machine, it is infrastructure as a service. And the way you work on the on-premises environment, you will have to work it in the cloud as well. If it is platform as a service, that means everything is pre-decided, and there is just few clicks, and your the way you wanted to enable the high availability backups and other things, they will be created. I hope it is going to help, and thank you.